Hey there, we're Shannon and Jerry Arner, your hosts of the Arner Adventures podcast.
We're a minimalist couple driven by intentional living and adventure.
Burned out from 24/7 grind of running our business, we traded the hustle and bustle for something more meaningful.
We parted ways with most of our belongings and moved to the coast.
Listen along as we chat about life's challenges, share inspiring stories, and help you live with more intention and less physical and mental clutter.
Each episode is a step toward doing and being just a little bit better for ourselves and the world around us.
Life's an adventure after all. Join us for the ride.
It's the Arner Adventures podcast. Hello, everyone. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Jerry.
We are back for episode 131 of the Arner Adventures podcast. Jer, it's officially summer.
Officially summer. Meteorological summer.
And regular summer.
And regular summer now at this point. Yay.
Yeah. Summer solstice was last week. It's official. It's bona fide.
Yeah.
I like anytime I can use the word bona fide.
I know you do.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, we have a special episode for you today. You know how important the topic of mental health is to us. The more we talk about it, the less stigma there will be about it. Our guest today is doing what he can do to do the same thing. He is Conrad Weaver, a filmmaker, and we are talking to him about his new documentary, PTSD911, which showcases the mental health challenges faced by first responders.
If you remember, back in our first year of the podcast, episode 25, we had Buddy Brooks, who is in public safety. We addressed this. It's such an important topic. One that we really wanted to talk about again, especially with someone who is raising much needed awareness on the topic.
That's right. We do want to mention that Echo, our newly adopted pup, is sort of getting used to our recording schedule. Yep. So you're going to hear him a bit in the episode. I try to edit out what I can, but folks, I'm not a professional editor. I am not a pro at audio editing. I do what I can. We learn as we go. And so, you know what? Echo does like to make an appearance.
Yeah, yes, he does, and you will realize Echo is with us.
Yes. Are you ready to go ahead and get to the convo with Conrad? Convo with Conrad.
Let's do it.
Well, we told you a little bit about today's guest, but we can't wait to dive right in. Our guest is Conrad Weaver. He is an award-winning filmmaker and producer, renowned for his dedication to mental health awareness. As president of Conjo Studios, a video production company based in Emmitsburg, Maryland, he's created impactful documentaries such as PTSD 911, highlighting the mental health challenges faced by first responders. Weaver's commitment to meaningful storytelling has earned him numerous accolades, including a Mid-America Regional Emmy Award. Through his work and personal endeavors, including a cross-country bicycle journey to promote mental health, Weaver continues to inspire and advocate for mental wellness. So you already know why we wanted him on the show. But Conrad, thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I like to paint a picture for our audience to tell them where you're coming to us from, if you would please share.
So I'm in my studio, my editing studio, podcast studio in Emmitsburg, Maryland. So we're about an hour northwest of Baltimore, hour and a half northwest of Washington, D.C., just on the Pennsylvania line, right below Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Okay. So you're probably far enough around away from the hustle bustle, but you're close enough if you want it.
We're close enough if we want to get into it, right? And if I have to, I was down to the city last week, and oh my goodness, the traffic, it was crazy. So it's like the worst in the nation, I think. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So I would probably stay away from that if I could. So that's
you definitely need to. Yeah. Like we had to go across the city. We were actually going over to the eastern shore of Maryland. So we had to go across the city of Washington, D.C., and then across the Bay Bridge. And of course it was Friday, and I forgot that it was like summertime and everybody's going to the beach, and traffic was everywhere. I was like, no, I want to be back on my bicycle in Wyoming,
Yeah. We live in on the coast of North Carolina, and we live in a beach town. We moved here a few years ago from Raleigh. And now when we drive back to Raleigh, which is nothing compared to DC traffic, I want to make sure I preface that I understand that. But when we drive back to Raleigh now, I'm just like, Oh my God. Like, how
Yeah,
did I live here this whole time? I
I
just need to
know.
get back.
I remember a few years ago, I was working on a film and I was out in the Midwest someplace. I think I was in Montana. And as I was flying back into Baltimore, I looked down and I saw all the traffic on the highways. And I was like, why am I coming back here? I was in Montana where there was like one car in the last hour, you know?
Thank you for the picture of where you are. It sounds like you're safe and you're
Yep.
and you're in a good space. So that's really good. I'm glad you brought up your bike because I mean, you've done so many great things that the first thing that we definitely want to talk about is your just incredible journey about riding your bicycle across the US,
Yep.
especially as part of your mental health journey and to promote your film. So I guess definitely want to know about the film, but I want to
Mhm.
know first what made you think of that to go, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna get on my bike and ride," and did you have lined up promotional stops, or, like, what was your mindset about doing this?
Yeah. So it's been a long time. I mean, I'm a weekend warrior on the bicycle. And so it's something that I've always wanted to do is ride a bicycle across the country. I've had some friends that have done it and they had just amazing stories and just the adventure of that and just the self-awareness and the learning that you receive from being on a bike that long. And so as I finished up this film, PTSD 911, I thought, how can we promote this in a different way? And so the idea popped in my head one day, well, why don't we ride bicycles across the country? There's first responders in every community. There's firehouses that we could probably stay at. They often
Mhm.
have bunk rooms. And so I recruited my friend John, who had just retired from his government job. And I said, hey, John, do you want to go on a bike ride? And he said, sure. Where are we going? I said, well, how about Oregon to Maryland? He goes, what? He goes, okay, I'm in. And it was that quick. In fact, I think the next week he went out and bought a bicycle to start
What?
training. Yeah, he was that committed. And so yeah, then we kind of made our plans. That was like a year. Actually, that was 2 years before we actually left. And in the summer, in May 15th of 2023, we flew out to Oregon and dipped our bikes in the Pacific Ocean and started a 65-day journey across the country, stopping at cities along the way to show my documentary. And we did stay in firehouses along the way. We met amazing people and
Oh,
just what an adventure. Yeah.
I
So
bet when you said he bought his bike, had he ever ridden before?
he did. He was
Okay.
kind of a mountain biker
Okay.
more of that. So, long time in the saddle on a road wasn't really his thing. But we started riding together soon after that and training. And so over the next 2 years, we did a lot of training. And then in the
Okay.
months leading up to our departure, we trained heavily to do this because we knew that, it wasn't so much the legs, it was like the backside.
I was gonna say it's probably we've done half marathons, but I mean I've power walked them. I've not run them. Jerry has. But I've always read that part of the training for that is really just miles on the feet. So
Yeah.
I would imagine the training for this would be, yeah, just having the
Hours
miles
in the
on your
seat.
butt. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. In
Yeah.
fact, we just did a ride the other weekend, and I hadn't ridden much, of long distance, and just the other weekend, we rode 100 miles across 2 days,
Oh, wow.
and I felt it because I hadn't
Uh-huh.
been riding, and so the backside was, quite tender for a couple days.
Did you map out your route, like, from Oregon to Maryland? Like, were they
Yeah, we
highway
did.
like, how did you
Yeah, we
decide what the route was?
So there's a route that goes across the country called the Trans-America Trail,
Okay.
that a lot of people take. We did part of that. It starts in Astoria, Oregon, and that trail actually goes south along the Pacific coast for 100 miles. And we were like, I'd rather go inland 100
Yeah.
miles. And so we kind of took a different route, but it really was we mapped it out according to the cities we were going to stop in for my film screenings. So we had our
Okay.
our launch in Astoria, Oregon. Then we rode to Portland, Oregon. And from there we rode across Idaho, down the Columbia River, all the way up to Missoula, Montana. And then we had a screening there at the University of Montana. Then down through Yellowstone, across Wyoming and to Scottsbluff, Nebraska, and then all the way east, from there. So we
Right.
had all these cities mapped out. So that kind of determined our schedule as well.
Hmm.
So we had some waypoints that we had to hit because, we had to be at the next city for the next event.
Say goodbye to the hassle of checking your luggage and wasting time at the airport. We got the perfect solution for you.
It's our fave, the Base carry-on rollers, your ultimate travel companion for the season. With Base, you can pack smarter and lighter so you can make the most of your getaway.
We've been flooded with questions about how we manage to avoid checking our luggage, and our answer is simple: pack smarter and choose Base.
Forget about those extra fees and waiting at that baggage claim. What a waste of time.
Waste of time.
The Base carry-on rollers are designed to fit all your essentials in one compact size so you can breeze through the airport without a worry. And they're super chic.
That's an understatement. Plus, we've got a special treat for you. Head over to arneradventures.com/base. That's BEIS and grab the link to save $15 off your first purchase.
Trust us, this is a game changer. All of our family and friends who've traveled with us at some point or another in the past couple of years, they all rely on Base luggage because they got tired of hearing me complain about how they were wasting my time.
That's right. So don't miss out on this incredible offer. Visit arneradventures.com/base to grab the link. It's also conveniently located in the show notes.
Now back to the show.
And so
Right.
we were really fortunate. We had a sponsor, so Lighthouse Health and Wellness. It's a mobile app for first responders. It's kind
Okay.
of a wellness app.
Okay.
So first responder agencies will get this app, and they'll be able to put mental health and wellness right in the palm of their officers' hands or their firefighters' hands. And
Hmm.
so this company, they sponsored the film, and then they came alongside of us and sponsored our ride. So I mean, we're two old dudes, and sleeping in a tent every night wasn't really our thing, even though we had tents with us.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so we got to sleep in hotels almost every night,
Yeah.
unless we were like in a firehouse but then 2 weeks before we left, our sponsor called and said, "Hey, I did something." We're like, okay. He said, "I bought an RV. I'm coming with you." And so we had a support wagon with us. They're always within a couple of hours of us. So an hour in a car is a day on a bicycle. So they were always within a day or two riding or an hour or two from us, just in case we needed help. We did need some help every once in a while. So
How was the weather like for those 60 something days?
yeah, the first 20 some days was actually pretty good. We had some hot weather in Oregon that we actually had to cut a day short
Hmm.
because it was in the high 90s, and we had smoke from the Canadian fires that was
Oh.
impacting us pretty heavily.
Uh-huh.
And we had a really long day this one day, and we got really hot, overheated really, and we had
Yeah.
to call the support wagon to come get us. And so they took us to our hotel. But overall, we had good weather. Now, once we hit Wyoming, we hit our first major storm. In fact, I'm working on a book about this. Uh, and we hit a storm coming into Yellowstone that was it looked really intense, a lot of lightning, but we actually made it in time. But then on the other side of Yellowstone in central Wyoming, where there was literally nothing, no trees, no buildings, no nothing, we were facing two storms that were coming together,
Oh.
and we saw lightning, and we could see, for miles, and we watching these storms all day. And we finally decided we better stop. We finally found a building that we could get to the side of, and we called our support crew. They were 40 miles behind us,
Oh god.
so they ended up coming and picked us up. And within 10 minutes of being in the RV going down the highway, lightning was hitting telephone poles next to the road, right where we would have been. And I actually did a screen grab of the radar
Uh-huh.
because it was so severe. I wanted to capture that just for history's sake.
Yeah,
And
and
it
for
was
your
like
book.
super scary. Yeah, it was super scary. And we were so glad we weren't, having to lay in a ditch someplace and,
Right.
and avoid the lightning. So yeah, we had a few storms like that hit us, but otherwise, the, on a ride like this, the biggest danger are the cars in the trucks. Had a
Right.
couple of close calls, but we were of the mindset of we want to be seen. So we were
Mm-hmm.
wearing all these bright colors and
Yeah.
flashing lights everywhere, and just so people would, recognize us and see us,
Yeah.
coming. And so, fortunately, we had, we didn't have any major incidents along the way. So,
So when you were stopping at the fire departments and the
mhm.
firehouses, the film was already released, or because you had these stops of it premiering, like were they? I'm sure you're stopping and they're like, oh, well, where can we see it? Were they able to see it at the firehouse, or how
Yeah.
did that work?
So what we did is and I had several copies on Blu-ray disc with me.
Okay.
So we had these events planned. So you had major events planned. We had a city coordinator for every event, all but one. But so we had a local person, like for example, Des Moines, Iowa. We had a police officer there who kind of took the reins, and we had a huge event there. So they brought together the fire department, police department, citizens,
Okay.
everyday citizens come together. It was a public event. But
Okay.
then for those agencies that hosted us, that in some places we just rolled in. We're like, we're here. We need a place to stay. Can we stay in your firehouse? They were like, sure. And so when they did that, we gave them a copy of the film. And so
Okay.
we let them,
Okay.
just kind of gave them a copy as a thank you for that. But
Yeah.
and we rolled into one, and we weren't really planning on staying there because we had already had booked a hotel.
Uh-huh.
But they were like, well, what are you doing for dinner? It's like, we don't have any plans. Well, we've been smoking a brisket. We're like, what time's dinner? So they were, so welcoming and so generous to us along the way, and people in general were. Once they heard about our mission and what we were
Mm-hmm.
doing, and we were also raising money along the way to support first responders who are suffering from PTSD, and so we
Uh-huh.
raised a couple $1,000s that way.
What made you decide that you were gonna do this film? Did you have experience in the field? Were there loved ones in the field? Or what made you decide you were gonna go that route?
Yeah, so I'm a filmmaker, so I produce documentaries, and in 2018, I finished a film called Heroin's Grip. It's a story about the opioid crisis.
Mhm.
And while I was producing that film, I had the opportunity to do ride-alongs with law enforcement and with fire and EMS services. And I wanted to experience what first responders experience when they roll up on an overdose scene. And while we didn't have a whole lot during that time, every time I was like riding along, there was like no overdoses, which is great. We don't want overdoses.
Right.
But, but if there was one, I wanted to be there. And sure
Yeah.
enough, one day we got the call and there was an overdose. So I was with the police officer. We lights and sirens off to the scene. It was a fatal overdose. A young
Mhm.
woman overdosed on heroin. And
Mm.
we went into the scene. I'm not comfortable with that, used to it, never seen that before, never
Mhm.
experienced that before. It was really an eye-opening experience. But the first responders on scene were like, it's just Tuesday, just a normal day.
Wow. Mhm.
And so that got me thinking about, okay, how do these scenes affect first responders? And I started researching this and uncovered this whole issue of post-traumatic stress within the first responder community, high suicide rates, high
Yep.
divorce rates, high alcoholism, all the things. And so I went back to the officer that I was with that day and I said, hey, do you guys like suffer from PTSD? And she said, oh, if you only knew the half of it.
Mhm.
And then she said, if you want to make a movie about that, I'll do anything I can to help you. What she didn't realize, she'd become one of the main characters of this new film.
Mhm.
And so for the next 3 years, I worked to gather stories from firefighters, police officers, 911 dispatchers, and others that were suffering from PTS and PTSD. And so we put
Mhm.
together this documentary that's been now we're taking it around the country still.
Yeah.
We premiered it in November of 2022
Uh-huh.
down in Dallas, Texas, and we've had more than 50 screenings across the country. I mean, literally coast to coast. Our bike tour was called the Coast to Coast Tour, but
Yeah.
we literally did screening events, from all over the country. I'm still doing them, having some in a couple of weeks here in Maryland, and then I'll be out in Las Vegas and Washington State and Wisconsin and Minnesota and other places throughout this year.
I'm curious from I'm always curious if this is sort of because is it a regional thing? What is it? But I'll just tell you, two people in my family were firefighters, and they both are no longer firefighters because of mental health reasons.
Mhm.
And what through the years, and now as we have processed this, and they have their own journey, some of the things that we have talked about that we can't hardly believe is they were both at different departments, different parts of our state. Neither of the departments, and again, I don't know what your experience was in your research for the documentary of what you experienced when you went to the firehouses, is neither one of their departments had any sort of post counseling, let's process this. None. We interviewed someone from who was a firefighter in our first year of the podcast because I was so intrigued by this. Like, he was he still is a firefighter, but I was asking him, like, what's the deal? And he's like, well, we just ask each other, are we okay? And I'm like, is
Hmm.
this a masculine thing, or what do you think it is? And is that rare? Is it rare that they don't process
No,
it?
that's
Okay.
that's the norm. And that's why I produced this film, to kind of help shed light on that issue. Uh, in fact, just the other week, I was in Kentucky at an event. They had brought me out for a screening event. It was kind of a conference that we were at, and I was talking to a battalion chief from a fire department, and he said that his chief actually reprimanded him for wanting to do something in the mental health field. So that stigma is huge. And I had an old
Mm,
timer tell me one time that, the way we dealt with it back in the day was suck it up, here's a beer.
mm,
And yeah, that's how we dealt with it. And so it's very common that the first responder community doesn't talk about these things because they're the helpers. And
yeah.
so they don't want to be seen as being weak or needing help. And so it's been very common to not talk about it. Fortunately, in the 4 years, almost 5 years now that I've been working in this space, I've seen the needle move to the right direction where
Okay.
there's a lot more conversations about it. There's a lot more people talking about it. There's still pockets of the country where it's not a thing, but I've seen, especially in your major cities, most major metropolitan first responder agencies have a full-time officer or firefighter on staff the who's the wellness coordinator for
Okay.
that agency. Uh, Most of the, like, Indianapolis Fire has a really strong wellness unit.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore has as well, and other agencies. Now, interestingly enough, the Capitol Police, who were involved in January 6th, they
Uh-huh.
had nothing in place. And so, but since then,
Uh-huh.
I've worked with people who are working with them. They have set up a peer support team. They've set up wellness coordinators. They've set up all that to kind of help with the aftermath of that. And
Mm,
so until many agencies haven't had anything, but until in the last couple of years, it's really been a movement in that direction. In fact, the National Fraternal Order of Police, the FOP, they have a whole division now for mental health and wellness, and
okay.
so they have a full-time staffer who is a licensed clinical therapist who is on their staff, who manages that program for the FOP. And
Okay.
so, yeah, so there's a movement in the right direction, but we have a long way to go because suicides are still
Mm-hmm.
high.
Yeah.
Uh, Divorce rates are still, in the fire service, I think the divorce rates are 75% or higher. So, those are all things that we as citizens, my mission is to rise up people who can say, hey, we need to support our first responders. We
Mm-hmm.
need to provide resources for them. We need to provide line items in the budget to cover mental health
Mm-hmm.
and not stigmatize it, you
Right.
know, in order to,
Right.
help them understand it's okay to raise your hand and say, I got to check out for a few days. I got to take care of me.
I feel like we've come so far across the board about that, like about more. I think, of course, the more people talk about it, the less stigma there will be around it.
Yep.
But yeah, it's still so prevalent and so I don't know. Sometimes I just like when you were talking about them the overdose, and then they just like, oh, it's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
we know from, you and I think a lot of people know it's just putting it down, and then it's
Yep.
going to come out in other ways, even
Yep.
though those people at the time tell themselves, okay, if I ignore it, it's going to go away, or if I repress it, it's going to
Yeah.
go away. And we all know that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, especially law enforcement, they deal with the worst of human beings and human
Mm-hmm.
behavior. And they see it every day.
Yeah.
They're around it. They're surrounded by it. And
Yeah.
so that shapes their worldview. It shapes their view of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not in a healthy space, if you don't have the tools in your tool belt to take care of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
then those things begin adding up and what psychologists call cumulative stress. So these things accumulate, and it's like taking a glass and you start pouring water into that, and one drop at a time, one drop at a time, one incident at a time, and pretty soon your glass is full.
Yeah.
In fact, in my film, I have a police detective who was involved in a shooting. He ended up taking a man's life. He had been in the police, business for 20 some years, no problems until this. And then his life went off the rails for 6 years.
Mm.
And he says, that he finally got help. His chief, and he was in an agency that they take care of their people. And his chief said, go get help. And it saved his life. And he said, I asked my counselor why this one incident. I've had a lot of stuff happen in my life. He was in the Marines, he had a lot of things.
Yeah.
He said, because all this was filling up your cup and this one put it over the edge.
Mm.
And so if you don't have a way of diffusing those things, if you don't have a way of managing that cumulative stress, pretty soon it is going to blow up on you
Yeah.
and your life will blow up and implode. So,
It's interesting. One of the firefighters in my family used to say all the time how they were going and seeing people's worst day.
yep.
I'm sure it's terrible all around first responders. I'm just thinking with that, with the police that you were working with, it's almost as if they do see the sort of worst of humanity, and how could you let yourself get to this, and and then in
Mhm,
their mind work through it that way. And then on the other way of firefighters, it's like you're seeing this sadness constantly. I mean,
mhm.
it's terrible all across the board, but it makes me wonder, with you and working on both of those films, how did you help protect your mental wellness through all of that?
Yeah. Well, I have a great support system. I have my wife is an amazing partner, and she was actually I named her executive producer on this film, and she supports me 100%. And we kind of joke, but it's kind of true. She does what she does, so I can do what I do. She's a
Yeah.
school administrator, and kind of handles some of the kind of the financial burden for
Yeah.
the family. But
Yeah.
then I'm a person of faith, and it kind of depend on my faith. But then
Mhm.
also, I have to say this, that just this week, I started going to therapy. So I
Just
have
this
a
week.
I have a therapist
Wow.
now. So, and it's something that I know that I needed to do for a
Mhm.
while. And one of the guys in my film, and his name's Todd, he's with Garland Police Department in Garland, Texas. He's a good friend, and he keeps poking me. He said, okay, when are you going to go see a therapist? When are you going to go see a therapist? I think you need to go see, because you have all this trauma that you're carrying from all these
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
And finally, this week, he was like, "Well, here's some therapists in your area. Maybe you can go call one of these." I go, "Okay, Todd."
Wow, that's a good
So
friend.
absolutely. And so he connected me, and on Monday I went for my first session, and yeah, it's scary.
It
It's
it is, and congratulations. That's
Thank you.
wonderful that you took that
Uh,
step.
But I'm proud of myself for
Yes.
taking that step, and I'm looking forward to the next session on July 1st, and to see where
Yeah.
this goes. And because I promote this through the podcast that I have,
Mhm.
and through the speaking I do and the conversations I have. And so I thought, what a better way to have firsthand experience of what this is like going to therapy.
Right.
So
And I
I'm,
think in so many things, and we've talked about this on this show before, is you want to hear from someone, or know that someone is vested in, even in your field, even though you're working on this
Mhm,
documentary. You almost want to know, okay, you're doing this, why? And then your
Yeah.
why, well, are you practicing that why? And
Yeah.
so then to hear that you did, it's interesting too, because I know someone else who is just now getting into therapy, and she was saying how, God, I just, yeah, I know it's needed, but it's really hard. And I'm
Mm.
like, no, I know. Well, first of all, in the beginning, and I'm saying this because I want to make sure that people understand it's so important, but it is hard, especially at first, because you feel like you
Yeah.
have to catch them up. And
Right.
it's like you can't catch someone up with your whole life. I mean, I remember the first time I switched therapists, and I said that I just don't
Mm.
even know how to catch you up. Like, and
Mhm.
she said, just tell me what's going on right now. What are you
Mhm.
feeling right now? And so it is hard. It's but afterward, even though sometimes I'm like, I just don't even know if I want to deal with this today. And
Mhm.
then afterwards, you're always so thankful that you did, because you're doing something positive for yourself, you know?
Yeah. And, I've been on a journey to kind of get myself to a healthy spot for about 5 years now, and
Hmm.
even working on some mindset things, and I went through a course with this guy, and it was a 1 week intensive, and it reshaped my thinking. And so
Yeah.
it got me into the mental health space, the wellness space, working on myself every day. Um,
Mm.
I don't always succeed. I don't always do the things I need to do. Sometimes I do the things I don't need to do.
Yeah, we all do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I want to start every day with a fresh spot. In fact, this morning I got up and I woke up, and the first thing in my mind was like, we can start our day with a crappy attitude and start our day that way, or we can start with a positive attitude, which is more beneficial, right?
Right. Right.
And then I kind of actually I put this on TikTok. I said, if we start the day with gratitude, it affects our attitude.
Mm.
You
Yes.
know? And then someone else, I was telling someone today, uh, that line, she said, "Well, if you have gratitude, it affects your attitude and it'll impact your altitude."
Ah, I see a trademark coming.
Yeah. So, but
Oh,
it's
that's
so true,
yes.
and if you start the day with gratitude, it affects your attitude.
And then similar happened to me today. So where I live, there's this big fishing tournament every year here.
Mm,
And that's not our world. We don't get into all that, but
mm,
because of it, it's one of the largest. And so there's all these people in town, just all these tourists and all that. And so yesterday when I was walking my dog, who I told you we recently adopted,
mhm,
we're going through a lot of training and everything he's reactive to. And yesterday my mornings are just my time. Like I need my walk. And I love walking him. And but yesterday was very difficult. Just there were so many distractions, and
mm,
then the boats and all of the stuff.
mhm.
Anyway, so this morning I got out of bed, and immediately I sat up and I go, "Oh God, I don't want those tourists to be all out today." And Jerry said, "Okay, stop. Let's lead with today's going to be a great day, and it's good. Our walk is going to be great, and you're going to do a different direction today. It's going to be wonderful." And I really did say that to myself several times as I'm getting up, as I'm, leashing him, and it went better. And
Yeah.
and I thought, yeah, and I probably was because I kept saying, I'm so thankful that I have him because, we lost our other dog. And I'm
Mhm.
just thinking all these things of like, he's barking now, but I'm like, all these things that my mindset was, okay, I'm going to be really positive. I'm so grateful for him. He's helping us with our healing journey, and I'm going to walk him, and it's going to be a different way. And I came back and I said, gosh, that was one of the best mornings that
Mhm.
I've had. And it was totally because I had to work on shifting that mindset.
Yep.
And and it's hard sometimes, but
And you have to do that every morning, right? You have
yes.
to get up, and that is hard,
Yeah, it's not
especially
all
when
rainbows and sunshine. It really
it's
you have
not.
to work on it.
Yep, absolutely. And for me, I get affected a lot by weather systems. So I get a lot of sinus pressure headaches, and I've had one all day today, but
Mm.
I'm not letting that beat me down because I'm going to beat it.
Yes.
I'm going to overcome that, and it's all up in here in your head. And I have to, if we start with those positivity, and it's not all sunshines and roses. I don't, profess that, but
Yeah, yeah,
because
me
I
neither.
I got crap that happens every day,
Yes,
but
yes,
it's my approach to it. And if I approach it in a positive way, then I'm going to have a better outcome. And so
totally.
that's what I work on every day is to try to get up, have an attitude of gratitude, and so that I can have a better outcome today than I did yesterday. And then I keep growing. If we can grow ourselves, by 1% every day, how far ahead will we be in a year?
And I'm just thinking how wonderful it is that with both of those films that you've talked about, more specifically the PTSD 911, how great if you're how sometimes your gratitude practice, sometimes it's really hard and you're like,
Mm.
I need something. And sometimes it's that the sun is out, or sometimes it's that I'm
Yep.
breathing. I think that you should always remember that it's so great that you put that out into the world, because
Mm.
it's wonderful anytime someone speaks up or shines a light
Mhm.
on there being a problem and then presenting a solution. I mean, I'm just thinking, and I'm really not just like blowing smoke. I'm really
Mhm.
thinking you could save someone's life by just there being more awareness and to do something in in the
Yeah.
public
I'm so
safety or some kind of
grateful.
world.
Every time we do a screening event, we just had one a week ago. And every time I do these events, people come up to me and shake my hand and thank me. And I've had people, tell me that, wow, your film has really changed my life and has really impacted me deeply. And that just makes my heart sing.
Mm.
And it makes all the stress and the turmoil of trying to raise money to do a film and all the stuff that you have to do to make a film happen, it makes it worthwhile. And,
100%.
because my goal is really to make an impact in the world when I'm dead and gone, which will be, a few years from now, hopefully a
Hopefully a
lot,
very long time.
a long time. I want to have made a mark, and I want to have left the world a better place because I was in it,
Yeah.
and that's my vision is to do that.
So what is your goal now with the film? Just to continue rolling
Mhm.
it out and getting it to as many people as possible?
Yeah, right now we're really focusing on getting it into the hands of first responder agencies, and so we have
Mhm.
it available for agencies to purchase for training for within their agency, and then we're booking events across the country, doing screening events in as many places as we can because it's a type of film that it's not a great film to sit down alone in your living room to watch it.
Sure.
Uh, but it's better to sit with a group of people that can support each other.
The
And so
camaraderie of
we're,
yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so we're really encouraging first responder agency. We've had nearly 100 agencies across the country purchase the film, including some really large organizations like the Wisconsin Department of Justice, Ohio Department of Justice, the Maryland State Troopers Association, and some others like that have purchased the film to use. I'm actually talking with the Department of Homeland Security right now for
Wow.
the big national headquarters is
Uh-huh.
looking at purchasing the film. And so we're really engaging with some high level organizations like that to bring the film to them so that they can use it for training. And then we have it available as a toolkit. So we have this film plus another documentary that a friend of mine produced, and then a bunch of other video content and downloadables that these
Mm.
agencies can have and have access to, just for for mental health training for their people. And so we're doing
Right.
that. I have the First Responder Wellness Podcast
Mhm.
that kind of continues that conversation with first responders across the country. And so I'm going on a break in July, but August we'll launch season 2 of that show. And so that's going to continue to grow and develop. And
That's
so I'm,
great.
I'm kind of in this space for a while. There's a couple of other documentaries that are kind of knocking on my brain right now, but
Uh-huh.
we'll see what happens and what shakes
Okay.
out over the next
Okay.
few years. Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, let's get to your fast 5 questions.
Okay.
They're just this or that. They're just a fun way to get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
So, we'll go ahead and start. So, behind the mic or in front of the mic?
Oh my. Uh, in front of the mic.
Okay. Early morning shoots or late night editing?
Early morning.
Maryland adventures or exploring new places?
New places for sure.
Okay. A cross country bicycle ride or around the town cycling? And that's just like your everyday.
Oh,
Just
cross
curious.
country.
Oh,
I'd
see,
be ready to
again.
hop on a bike again anytime. Yep. In fact, my wife
Okay.
and she's retiring in about 6 years, and she has already said that when she retires, we want to do that together as a couple.
Okay.
So
Live music or listening to music at home?
if it's yeah, that's a good one. Jazz anytime, live or in the earbuds. So, but I prefer you prefer live if it's jazz. So
Okay. I do love live jazz music too.
yeah.
Okay. And you sort of probably answered this a little bit earlier,
Mhm.
but I want to go ahead and ask you the question that we ask all of our guests is, Conrad, what does a life well lived mean to you?
Mm. A life well lived is a life that cares about other people, that puts others first, that makes a difference for other people, and not just being a consumer. I think too many of us are attached to our cell phones, and if we can detach from technology and just really focus on the people around us and take care of them, I think then that's a life that's well lived and will have an impact.
Oh, that's wonderful. I would say you definitely have had an impact, but that I think you're so spot on too about all of that. The social media, having our phones. One of the things I did this past year was I keep my phone almost all the time on silent. I've never done that, but I
Yeah,
just always do it because I want to choose to go and look at the phone when I want to look at it or not be
yeah,
so reactive to it. So, yeah.
yep. And it's hard. It's hard to because they're small, they fit right in your pocket, and it's a challenge. It's a
Mhm.
real discipline.
But I would love it if you could tell everyone how they can find you and also how can they support you and how can they support the film?
Yeah, so the website is PTSD911movie.com, all one word, PTSD911movie.com. You can find us there on the socials. It's at PTSD911movie. Everywhere, LinkedIn. Well, on LinkedIn, it's my name, Conrad Weaver. You can find me there. But Facebook, all these other socials, you can find us at PTSD911movie. And yeah, just if you want to host a screening, go to our website. There's a link there that you can fill out a screening information form, and that'll send me an email, and it will trigger a conversation. So be happy to come to a city near you.
Okay, and I'm thinking anyone who's listening to this and has someone who is a first responder or in the public safety field, definitely direct them to this if they don't already know about it. On behalf of everyone, but of course just someone who also is a mental health advocate, thank you so much for all that you've done and that you continue to do for mental health advocacy.
Absolutely. I mean, health is important, and mental health is important. Our brains, control the rest of us. So if our brains aren't healthy, then we're not healthy. So
That's
we have to
right.
make it a priority.
Yeah. Well, thank
Mhm.
you so much, Conrad, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, that was a really, really, really cool and touching and informative episode.
Right?
Yeah.
I really liked Conrad a lot. I think that anytime anyone is a mental health advocate doing what they can to talk about it and put it out in such an interesting way to like to promote his film, I think that's great, but then he's so likable. And not that
Yes.
our guests are not likable. I just think his personality really comes through in an endearing way and that he really cares about. It's not like he's just a filmmaker and he's like I just want to put something out and hope it's successful. You can tell it really changed him.
Yeah, well, yeah, he seems like a very accessible type of person that you could just talk to. And I think what really drew me in is I'm a cycling enthusiast too. So that was just the coolest thing in the world to hear
Yeah.
his story about going from out west back to Maryland and making all those stops at firehouses and whatnot and talking to the staff about his purpose, which is
Yes.
PTSD and all that with the first responders. I mean that drew me in because I just really like the idea of that, and I've known a few people who've taken long distance rides like that.
Yeah. Maybe it's something that I was going to say you think my beach cruiser would do it? Maybe not, but maybe not. But
Yeah.
maybe it's something that we could think about at some point.
Yeah.
I would like to drive across the US, like do a whole road trip. I think that would be
Oh, I've
fun.
always wanted to do that. Yeah, and never have.
Right.
So, yeah.
One of the other great things I thought is how and this is not me or Jerry heavy breathing, by the way. This is Echo. His transparency about just now getting into therapy.
Yeah.
And of course, we know what that's like. We know the importance of it. We know how it is when we got into it.
Yeah.
And also just, how that just opens up a whole journey in itself. And I said this in the episode. I think it's so important, not only that he cares so much, but now he's sort of like, oh, okay, this has also impacted me to be more aware of my own mental health. And I think that's just really great.
Oh, me too. Yeah, his focus originally wasn't necessarily on his own, but it circled around to that, and it's led him on a pretty interesting journey of his own. If this episode resonated with you, or if you know of someone who would benefit from anything we talked about today, or any episode, our guests, or anything, please share it with a friend. It's a great way of supporting the podcast and us, and we really appreciate it.
Another way of supporting the pod is by leaving us a 5-star review or rating on the platform you're listening to us on. Oh, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button because that also supports us. We would love that.
You can always find us, links we refer to during the show, and any of the podcast sponsors at arneradventures.com or linked here in these show notes. And until next time, enjoy that journey you're on. We're wishing you lots of adventures.
Adios.
Arrivederci.
Au revoir.
Adios.
Sayonara.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Dos vidaniana.